Cities across the country have banned landlords from being able to reject tenants with Section 8 vouchers. But in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, landlords have ignored those laws and continued to reject those tenants. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, Milwaukee, like many other cities across the U.S., has passed a law that basically makes it illegal for landlords to reject tenants with Section 8 vouchers, okay? They call it source of income discrimination, right? They call it that because what they want to make it sound like is that landlords are somehow, racially discriminating against tenants with these vouchers, and that's a complete joke, okay? That's nonsense. What landlords are doing is they're choosing to or not to participate in a government program that is just filled with problems, okay? There's so much bureaucracy and nonsense involved in the whole Section 8 program, and a lot of landlords, they just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the awful tenants. They don't want to deal with the lack of accountability for those tenants when they cause problems. They don't want to deal with the government bureaucracy, inspections, etc. that they have to, go through in order to have these tenants rent from them, and they don't want to deal with the lower rents and the slower process involved in getting paid. So, there's a lot of good reasons why landlords just don't want to participate in Section 8, but you know what? These governments, rather than addressing these issues, they say, no, we're going to force landlords to do it. Well, you know what the honest reaction from a lot of landlords was? Well, you know what? I don't care what you say I have to do. I'm going to operate my business in the way I see fit regardless. I'm going to work around your law. Maybe I just won't come out straightforward and say I'm rejecting this tenant because they have a voucher. Maybe I'll find some other reason to reject that tenant, okay? But at the end of the day, these people have no better chance of finding housing now than they did back in 2018 when Milwaukee passed the ordinance in the first place. So I bring this up because Kansas City recently passed a similar ordinance, and I don't think it's going to help one bit. Okay, the tenants are up here. Oh, this is going to be a game changer. We'll finally be able to find housing. That's a bunch of hogwash, okay? You're not going to be able to find any more housing because, you know what, we're not stupid. Landlords aren't stupid, okay? The ones who don't want to participate in that program, they're going to find other ways to reject you. And that's the truth, okay? You are going to be in no better a position than you were before that law was passed. The only thing it is a feel-good measure put in place by politicians looking to get votes. Meanwhile, you know what the best way to find affordable housing would be? It would be to let me get my credit fixed up. Let me pay off my debts. Let me, get a constant, steady stream of decent income. Let me go find a better paying job. And you know what? Suddenly housing opportunities, they become a lot easier to find when those things are true. Okay, depending upon Section 8, depending upon the government to pay your bills for you is probably the worst possible way to find housing. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So do you believe that, these laws actually are helping these tenants be able to find housing? Do you think that all of a sudden all the landlords who didn't want Section 8 before, they're just, yep, I comply. Yes, every tenant's now is saying, no. Do you really believe that's what's happening? Do you believe these landlords are actually going to go out there and rent to Section 8 tenants because the law says they have to? Or do you think like I do? Are you very skeptical of the landlords and believe that, hey, we know what's best for our business and we are still going to not want to participate regardless of what the law says? Some landlords, they just work any fines or any citations into their business model. They're like, hey, I'll just pay the fines because that's cheaper than the thousands of dollars worth of damage that one of these tenants could do to my property or the hoops that I'd have to jump through, okay? So, yeah, interesting article we got coming up, and, let's see what it says. This article is coming from the pbswisconsin.org, and it says, Milwaukee County banned Section 8 housing voucher discrimination, but many landlords still do it. A 2018 ordinance to protect voucher recipients hasn't stopped landlords from categorically rejecting them, and Milwaukee County officials question whether they can enforce the provision. See, they don't even know if they can enforce it, okay? And even in places where they do enforce it, they have a very difficult time proving that landlords rejected someone because of the voucher. The only way they can really do it is when the landlords, they blatantly say in an advertisement, no Section 8. So a lot of landlords, they don't write it in their ads anymore. They don't tell people. But when they are doing their applicant screening, right? If the person has, voucher recipient or whatever written onto the application, instant rejection. Okay, but anyway, let's see what this article says, and keep in mind, this is written from a more tenant-friendly point of view. Jasmine Varela forgot she applied for a housing voucher until a letter arrived in 2023. After languishing on a wait list for 14 years, she learned the city of Milwaukee's housing authority would finally issue her a Section 8 voucher. She thought the rent subsidy would help her provide a better life to her 4 children. I was excited because I thought I was going to get a nice house, more rooms for my kids, and a better neighborhood, she recalled. And let me stop right there. That's 2 paragraphs into this article, and I see a bunch of garbage right now, okay? First of all, this lady's been on a wait list for 14 years, so her economic situation has not changed at all in 14 years? 14 years. You know how many different jobs I've had in the last 14 years? And yeah, I've been with the same agency with the federal government for 8 years, right? But, I think back 14 years and I'm like, well, so much has changed. I went from a low-level employee to a nice mid-level employee where I'm at right now. I've gotten pay raises. I've switched, I've been to 3 different agencies within the federal government. If we talk about before I was with the federal government even, right? I mean, I've worked over a dozen jobs in my life. Over a dozen different jobs. Some of them paid higher than other ones, some of them paid lower. But this lady, she's just been sitting around for 14 years doing absolutely nothing to change her economic situation. So I have a big problem when you tell me that, hey, I applied for Section 8 14 years ago and I'm still just broke and nothing has changed and and I still need this voucher. And then I have to ask also, why or how were you able to survive for 14 years while you were waiting? Okay? Like, in my mind, the Section 8 program is to help people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford housing, right? But apparently you've been able to afford housing for the last 14 years. Okay, so how am I supposed to have any sort of sympathy for somebody who could afford housing but would much rather have the government pay for it? I'd rather have the government pay for my house too, but I can afford it. That's the problem. So you're receiving social welfare benefits when you don't need them. And that's what my problem is, okay? We have a government sitting here paying so people can essentially be lazy so she can have subsidized housing. Why does she get this benefit? She doesn't need it. If she needed it, she wouldn't have been able to survive for the last 14 years on that waiting list. So we have a person who doesn't need this voucher. What a joke. And you know what? This socialist garbage has been pushed down our throat for too long, but I'm only 2 paragraphs in. Let's continue. The news only kicked off a new challenge, trying to find a landlord who would accept the voucher before it expired in 120 days. The 36-year-old Walgreens employee found few willing landlords and few resources to help her pay upfront fees, such as the first month's rent and security deposit. She went on to submit 50 rental applications, spending $1,275. Feeling desperate about 90 days into her quest, she put aside her pride and asked family for help. She hoped to find a house closer to her children's Southside Milwaukee school, but eventually found just one landlord across town in Old North Milwaukee who would accept the voucher and work with her credit history. Her mother worried about safety in the neighborhood, but Varela felt she had no choice but to sign the lease before her voucher would expire on January 28th. And they slipped a little something in there, and I don't know, I should have highlighted that when I said it, right? But they said she only found one landlord willing to accept her voucher and her credit history. So now we come to realize that, no, this isn't just about the Section 8 voucher. Okay, if you have a Section 8 voucher, but you have a very strong payment history, and you show that, hey, well, this person is credit worthy, this person is a very good, person that we believe is always going to pay their debts, right? But This person has garbage credit on top of that. Now, this is an issue with a lot of Section 8 tenants. Don't get me wrong, right? But believe me, the credit history is a good reason to reject this lady and not even say that it's because of her voucher. Okay? Say when you see somebody's crappy credit and you're like, oh, well, you know what? I don't want to work with that. I don't want to work with that because I don't know for sure you're going to pay that portion of the rent that you have to pay. And then I'm going to be short every single month because, you just don't pay your bills, So, like they make this out like this poor tenant's getting rejected because she doesn't pay or because she has a voucher, when it's really she's getting rejected because she has crap credit and a voucher. Southside Milwaukee landlords she encountered weren't willing to accept voucher aid, Varela said, adding that several doubted they would pass inspections required by the program. And yeah, a lot of landlords wouldn't pass the inspections without spending thousands of dollars to do repairs. So, hey, that's too bad that they wouldn't accept that. But you know what? They're probably right. Okay, I had to spend thousands of dollars in repairs for a Section 8 tenant. Never again. That's all I can say. Never again. Section 8, the federal government's largest low-income housing subsidy program, serves 2.3 million households nationwide, including more than 16,500 in Milwaukee County in 2022, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It aims to broaden housing access for participants, but renters and housing advocates say landlords outside of historically disinvested neighborhoods rarely rent to people with vouchers, one of many factors limiting opportunities in Milwaukee and nationwide, particularly people of color. And you know what? They're like, oh, well, other than the poorest neighborhoods, a lot of landlords in the nicer neighborhoods, they don't want to rent to people with Section 8 vouchers. And why would we? Okay? Why should somebody who is super low income be able to live in the same house that I live at when I work my butt off to live in this house? Okay? There is the issue of fairness. The issue of fairness, right? The problem I have with the socialist system is that you want to give people who don't work or people who don't, work as hard or don't work as much the same exact housing and nice area to live in as somebody who works their butt off, right? And so then what happens to those people who are working their butt off? They get mad. They get jealous, right? And then they're like, well, why am I working so hard? I'm just going to get a voucher too, right? And so basically these socialist programs, they breed laziness. They breed people dependent upon the government. That's why you have people who have these vouchers for decades, for their entire lives, Like this sort of program is supposed to get people back on their feet. How are you getting back on your feet if you've been on a voucher for 30 years? You're not getting back on your feet. You're just sucking off of the government's, money. That's all you're doing. So yeah, I don't like Section 8 as a program. I don't like socialist programs at all. Okay? And the people, like this article, it paints a picture of this tenant who is just so much of a welfare queen, and it just annoys the heck out of me. So, the main thing with this article is landlords, right? They don't have to comply. They don't have to just sit there and deal with this program if they don't want to, okay? I don't want to deal with the program. Now, I don't invest in a place where they force this upon you. I do invest in Independence, Missouri, but Kansas City, Missouri, the city right next to Independence, is the one that passed that ridiculous law that says that landlords have to take vouchers. So as of right now, I'm in the clear, right? But you know what? I don't want to have to deal with Section 8 anymore. If you don't, as a landlord, you shouldn't have to. And I disagree 100% with these laws that are trying to force this nonsense down on us.